When EPCOT Center opened on October 1st, 1982, it promised to be the future of technology, industry, and entertainment. After making history with the opening of Disneyland in 1955 and expanding with the opening of Walt Disney World in 1971, the Walt Disney Company were hoping to change the landscape of themed entertainment once again. But today, Epcot is almost unrecognizable as the park that originally opened 4 decades ago. Out of the 8 original Future World attractions that were built, only 2 of them remain. Spaceship Earth, that's the big orb, and Living with the Land, that's the agricultural boat ride. The troubled history of Epcot Center, its race against the clock construction, and the many weird and wonderful attractions that have since shut down have been a source of fascination for theme park fans for years. Many hours of video and many pages of blog posts and forum posts have catalogued the changing face of Epcot over the decades, and commiserated over said changes. But there is one ride that barely gets talked about. World of Motion was a classic Disney dark ride, and it was one of the largest and most ambitious ever attempted by the company at the time. Like Pirates of the Caribbean, it had hundreds of animatronic figures and ambitious set pieces that created sprawling scenes. Like the Haunted Mansion, it had a catchy original song written by Disney legends X Atencio and Buddy Baker. Like the Jungle Cruise, it combined sight gags with a historically grounded setting, taking riders from the dawn of man into the far future. Like so many of the rides at Epcot, it represented the peak of Imagineering skill and ambition at the time. It was a true showcase of how far the company had come since Walt Disney's plans for a little amusement park in a Californian orange grove. But today, it's barely mentioned. I don't think I've ever heard someone call World of Motion their favourite ride from their childhood. Theme park fans love talking about old Epcot rides, but World of Motion isn't given the same starry-eyed reverence as Horizons or the same righteous anger as Journey into Imagination. It would be like Spaceship Earth disappearing and everyone just forgot it ever existed. Like, really? You're making a top 10 defunct attractions list and putting the World Showcase buses on it over World of Motion? You can ride a bus at home. As with most Disney history, the seeds for World of Motion were planted in the fertile soil of the 1964 World's Fair. Disney had worked with several companies to create pavilions for the fair, and one of these was the Ford Wonder Rotunda. This giant pavilion had a showroom of new Ford cars, model villages from around the world, and a dark ride taking visitors back in time to see the invention of the wheel and the death of the almighty dinosaurs that would one day fuel Ford's cars. The pavilion was incredibly successful, a perfect blend of Disney's showmanship at the peak of his career and the unflagging optimistic consumerism of mid-century America.
It's hard to believe there actually is an oven.
Elsewhere in the transportation section of the fair, General Motors were enjoying success with their own pavilion. This striking building had a 10-story high facade and contained experimental car prototypes, showcases of new automotive technology, and something called the New Futurama. This was General Motors' own attempt at a dark ride without Disney, and it was a pseudo-sequel to their exhibit at the 1939 New York World's Fair. Visitors would sit in moving chairs with built-in speakers and go past a series of miniature scenes predicting the future of technology, transportation, and living.
You are entering Futurama, alone with your own thoughts.
There was a moon base, a jungle outpost, a metropolis of the future, an underwater hotel with robot-armed exploration pods, a farm in the middle of the desert made possible with new irrigation techniques. Hey, wait a minute. Despite the noted success of their own pavilion, General Motors were impressed with what Disney had done with Ford, and they were keen to get some Disney pixie dust of their own. After the closure of the fair in 1965, Walt began throwing himself into a new project. Disney was occupied with what he considered to be the largest problem facing modern society, the urban crisis. The rapid growth of suburbs in the mid-20th century saw wealthy families moving out of urban centres. This had then left cities without a robust tax base to draw from, and funding for aging infrastructure and social services suffered as a result. Cities like New York and Detroit became notorious for their crime and pollution, and for riots protesting the brutal treatment of Black Americans by police. Walt was planning an ambitious new building project to showcase his ideas for better American cities of the future.
EPCOT will take its cue from the new ideas and new technologies that are now emerging from the creative centers of American industry. It will be a community of tomorrow that will never be completed, but will always be introducing and testing and demonstrating new materials and new systems.
The key to Walt's vision for EPCOT was to partner with American corporations to solve urban problems with technology, giving real, tangible outputs to the promises made at events like the New York World's Fair.
And EPCOT will always be a showcase to the world for the ingenuity and imagination of American free enterprise.
Disney bought almost 30,000 acres of land in Central Florida to build this new prototype community, and struck a deal with the Florida legislature and the governor of Florida to give Disney the legal powers of a Florida county. A press conference on the 15th of November 1966 announced EPCOT to the world, but just over a month later, Walt Disney passed away. After Walt's death, the company focused on building the easiest part of the Florida project, the theme park that would become Walt Disney World. Despite wanting to respect Walt's wishes and do something with EPCOT, it was clear that an actual experimental community with real people living there was not going to be possible without him. Some years later, in 1976, an internal booklet was circulated that attempted to define this new post-Walt vision for EPCOT. The central tenet of the concept was rooted in championing capitalist enterprise. The introduction for the booklet opens by saying, "In the decades since Walt Disney made his idea known to the world, it has become painfully apparent that government and industry have both lost the public's trust. A recent national opinion poll has indicated clearly that the majority of people no longer believe that the actions of these institutions are motivated by genuine concern for improving the quality of life. As a result, democracy and free enterprise are coming under increasing attack, both at home and around the world." It then goes on to say that EPCOT is dedicated to the belief that public trust in our democratic institutions and the free enterprise system itself can and must be strongly reaffirmed.
Nobody listens to the government when they proclaim things in most of these areas. Nobody trusts industry because they have an axe to grind, but everybody trusts Mickey Mouse.
Despite all these lofty values, the question of what exactly EPCOT was remained elusive. Eventually, the nebulous concept of a permanent World's Fair was settled on, with one half of the park focusing on future technology and the other half showcasing cultures from around the world. Still impressed by Disney's work at the 1964 World's Fair, and ready to take any opportunity away from rival car manufacturers, General Motors jumped at the chance to sign on to the project. Talks started between General Motors and Disney in 1977, and they agreed to sponsor a ride at EPCOT Center in December of that year. They were the first industrial partnership to be publicly associated with the EPCOT project, with announcements going out to the press in January of 1978. Many of the early previews and concept art for EPCOT are incredibly vague. Some initial documents for EPCOT Center had something called a transportation pavilion presented by General Motors, but the only artwork shown is a peek at an abstract futuristic city. Construction on EPCOT began in 1979, with an ambitious deadline of October 1982. With General Motors being the first company to sign on to EPCOT, the attraction that would eventually become World of Motion was the first ride finished by the creative department and the first ride to be engineered and completed. Disney had brought in an unusual figure to help with World of Motion's development. Ward Kimball had worked at Disney since the early 1930s, and he was a prolific and talented animator. He worked on Snow White and Fantasia, as well as designing and animating Jiminy Cricket, the mice from Cinderella, many of Alice in Wonderland's characters, and the crows from Dumbo that we don't talk about. In the 1950s, Ward moved into television, and was the producer of a series of edutainment shorts for the Disneyland TV show that had predicted the future of space travel. Transportation had always been a passion of Ward's, and he was an avid rail fan who built his own home railroad with a restored steam locomotive. Despite his retirement in 1973, his interest in transportation and his background in educational edutainment made him the perfect person to lead World of Motion's creation. Distilling the entire history of transportation into a 15-minute ride was a challenge, though.
Well, it's one thing to show what happened in different situations. It's another problem to be entertaining. And because I'd worked on many sequences at Disney Studios and involved gags and humor and so forth, I decided that the best approach would be to treat the whole idea of going through these epochs of transportation change, all the way from the point where man worked or walked on his 2 feet to the time he had automobiles and jet planes, treat it as a light subject. In other words, sort of tongue-in-cheek.
Ward also worked alongside Imagineer Claude Coates to develop the attraction, as well as fellow Imagineer Mark Davis. Mark Davis was responsible for a lot of the visual gags in Pirates of the Caribbean and the Jungle Cruise, making him the perfect choice for a humorous look at the future of transportation. Buddy Baker and Exitensio worked on the theme song for the attraction, creating the music and lyrics respectively. Titled Fun to Be Free, the song is a simple earworm of a tune that was adapted to match the time and place of different scenes throughout the ride. Although the deadline of October 1982 meant that finishing EPCOT was down to the wire, General Motors' early involvement and the attraction's quick turnaround meant that it was more than ready for opening day.
Appropriately wheel-like in shape, World of Motion takes a good-humored look at transportation through the ages.
World of Motion opened along with the rest of EPCOT Center on October 1st, 1982. The pavilion sat between the entrance to the World Showcase and what would eventually become Horizons on the west side of Future World. Housed in a large cylindrical building that was 360 foot in diameter, World of Motion was almost 15 minutes long and featured over 100 audio animatronics. After entering the Omnimover ride vehicle, visitors would make their way up the curved track to the second story of the building, overlooking the entrance to the pavilion. The first scene showed cave people using foot power to get around, and the light-hearted tone of the ride is immediately apparent as they try to cool down their overworked feet. Alternative modes of transportation are briefly mentioned, as various beasts of burden are pressed into service, with mixed results. The next scene showed the invention of the wheel, with a king rewarding the inventor of the circular device and banishing inventors with humorously non-circular wheels. Screens were used throughout the ride as backdrops, showing a mixture of hand-drawn animation and archival footage to complement the time period being shown. After the invention of the wheel, a dizzying screen effect showed a pattern of wheels rolling forward, as the narration proclaimed that now things really got rolling.
Now things really get rolling. It's fun to be free.
A second-hand chariot yard featured Romans wheeling and dealing with their newfound freedom, as well as whatever this is. The next scene showed great sailing ships from the golden age of sail, and featured Christopher Columbus facing down a large sea serpent. Riders would then return to land to see the inside of Leonardo da Vinci's workshop, as he ignored a model sitting for the Mona Lisa to work on a flying contraption instead. Humans continued their adventure into the air in the next scene, which showed a hot air balloon flying through some rooftops, accompanied by some farm animals that had picked up along the way. Riders then entered the Age of Steam. A steam carriage faced off against a bull for the right-of-way over a small bridge, and then a Mississippi paddleboat was loaded up at a Louisiana dock. The march of progress continued, with the next scene showing a pioneer wagon train getting attacked by Native Americans. The Age of Steam reached its peak with a magnificent steam train scene, although the unfortunate passengers were robbed at gunpoint by bandits. Then riders saw the invention of the bicycle, along with all of the potential dangers that come along with leaving your house for a nice trip into the countryside. Several smaller scenes show the development of the car, with mechanics working on the first automobiles and a livery stable competing with a mechanic shop. The centerpiece of this section was a large traffic jam caused by an overturned cart, with a horse panicking amongst the new urban traffic of cars and omnibuses. The freedom of the automobile is shown in the next scene, as a couple enjoys a countryside picnic in peace, without a muddy pig in sight. They're also able to drive to see the new aeroplanes at the air show, and riders see a young woman very taken with a dashing aviator. The ride comes to an end with a parade of original vintage General Motors cars, showing the evolution of the automobile through the 1930s, the 1940s, the 1950s, and the 1960s. After this, 3 speed tunnels take the ride vehicle into the center core. These speed tunnels were large rooms with wraparound screens on the sides and ceiling, and a fan blowing air at the riders' faces to simulate faster movement. The first tunnel showed videos that gave the impression of speeding over the land, the sea, and through the sky, while the second 2 took riders into the future. The ride ended with the Omnimovers circling the center core, a large room showing a city of the future with projection effects. The final scene before the unloading area was the same Pepper's Ghost effect as the Haunted Mansion, to put riders into the car of the future, which was this little blobby thing. It wouldn't be an Epcot Center ride if you didn't need to exit through the sponsor section.
A walk-through area called Trans Center offers information about such things as computer-aided car design and aerodynamics.
Aerotest was a replica of a wind tunnel, with a video explaining the aerodynamics of cars and how engineers combat drag. The bird and the robot featured an animatronic toucan doing skits with the Unimate Puma 600, a robotic car assembly arm used in General Motors factories. The water engine was a film debating the merits of various automotive power systems. Each system was represented by a hand-animated character who argued for their energy type, with the ultimate conclusion being that the combustion engine used by General Motors is superior. Concept 2000 showed the development of a car from idea to concept, using exciting examples from General Motors. Meanwhile, Dreamer's Workshop was a gallery of futuristic transportation ideas developed by General Motors. The exit back into Epcot took visitors through a showroom of contemporary General Motors cars that were available to buy from General Motors. General Motors, General Motors, General Motors.
General Motors, General Motors, General Motors understands the world of motion, past, present, and future. And we're proud of that too. Now we invite you to join us in an exciting, informative, and entertaining world that offers something for everybody.
There's no doubt that Epcot Center is as unusual as its name. If you do come here, you're sure to come away with a different view of the past, present, and future.
But the theme of the park is supposed to be the future, and monorails vie with robots for attention.
For those of us who have not been to Epcot Center in Florida, what are we talking? I imagine a lot of hotels and exhibits, a World's Fair type of atmosphere. What is it exactly?
The press and the public didn't quite know what to make of Epcot Center when it opened. They had been teased with this new park for almost a decade, while Disney had been reluctant to put into words exactly what this new venture even was. It had been called an experimental prototype community of tomorrow, a permanent World's Fair, a thinking man's theme park, the blueprint for the future, and a journey to the center of the world.
But maybe you're asking yourselves, well, what's an Epcot? Well, that's a good question. Is it just another amusement park? No. Number one, Epcot is the experimental prototype community of tomorrow. And number two, Epcot isn't just an anything. Oh, no. It isn't just a resort. It isn't just a World's Fair, not just a cavalcade of wizardry, technology, and flair.
Many reviewers were positive about the new park, and although others were somewhat bemused, they were interested in the educational angle and the idea of a theme park for adults. Time magazine called it a mind-pummeling assault of electronic ingenuity, historical fact, fancy, showmanship, faith, hope, and goo. Paul Goldberger from the New York Times found the park all silly and completely endearing, but enjoyed the slower pace and the serious educational mood of this more grown-up theme park.
The Magic Kingdom is a lot of fun, and it's something that makes you feel like you're a kid again. But this is something that sort of stimulates your mind as well as just having fun.
It was done very well. It was very educational.
It's nice the way they take you through the funny side of it first and then bring you into the educational side after. I think that's a good idea.
It's fun for the kids. They have a great time, and they learn so much, and so do we. Yeah. As we're leaving the park, it starts to sink in like how much you've absorbed during the day. It's wonderful. They come up with stuff weeks down the road that they've learned here.
Other reviewers were less impressed, and Disney seemed prepared for this criticism. Marty Sklar told the Wall Street Journal before opening that, "We worry that the corporation's roles might have the appearance of trying to foist propaganda on the public. We do plead guilty to presenting an optimistic view of the future. People can turn on their TVs and hear about crime and pollution. Why would they come to a vacation spot that featured the same things?"
In no way are we setting out in this project to say that Disney has all the answers. In no way are we saying that EPCOT Center presents all the answers. What we are presenting are turn-ons about each of these subjects. Something to get you interested, excited about these subjects so you want to know more about it.
Jennifer Allen at New York Magazine concluded that, in spite of its inspirational efforts, there is something vaguely depressing about Future World. Meanwhile, Progressive Architecture summarized the park as a maze of disconcertingly meaningless, but nonetheless impressive, corporate-sponsored exhibits and displays.
U.S. industry has sprung for some of the cost, with General Motors funding a World of Motion exhibit and Exxon having put together a Universe of Energy.
In all of the opening day buzz, World of Motion barely got a mention. Most of the press focused on Spaceship Earth, which was clearly intended to be the centerpiece of the park, while also covering the more memorable highlights of Exxon's animatronic dinosaurs and Kraft's singing milk. When World of Motion is mentioned, it's nearly always for its humorous take on history, casting it as the comedy relief, a nice break from all the serious learning and education that's happening.
While in the future world, don't miss the World of Motion. It's a humorous look at travel from the invention of the wheel.
Although Disney has always relied on corporate sponsors, or sometimes just good old-fashioned advertising, there was something about the nature of Epcot that attracted suspicious looks. The core values of the park were focused on teaching the general public to love and trust the government and corporations again, and an America that had just lived through the social and political upheaval of the 1970s was in no mood for that just yet.
But this infuriates me to see the lookings on of what seems to be coming to be a police state in this country.
The result of these charges has been to raise serious questions about the integrity of the White House itself.
And at this point, we believe there is still no danger to the public health. Metropolitan Edison has given you and us conflicting information.
Getting off a ride about the wonders of transportation and walking into a showroom of sparkling new General Motors cars was just too on the nose. General Motors resident manager Ed Freer told the press, "We've been criticized and applauded, but almost everyone wants to stand in line for a look." Meanwhile, Kodak's spokesperson said the quiet part out loud, saying, "You might entrance a teenager today, but tomorrow he's going to invest his money in Kodak stock." World of Motion closed on January 2nd, 1966, after 14 years of operation. General Motors had been struggling since the early 1980s, partially due to issues with vehicle reliability and also from cheaper foreign cars entering the American market. Where another company might have pulled their sponsorship altogether, General Motors were apparently as eager as ever to continue their relationship with Disney, and they had World of Motion closed so a brand new ride could take its place. I guess they still wanted to make sure Ford wouldn't have a chance at that Disney magic. GM and Disney. A love story for the ages. They wanted to modernize their image, and a traditional dark ride with quirky scenes from history just wasn't cutting it in the cool and ironic new millennium. GM's vice president and general manager for marketing told the New York Times, "We realized we needed a major redo of the attraction, but that decision was made from a marketing perspective." The company was looking to rehabilitate its reputation in North America after a handful of lawsuits over the safety of their cars. Another spokesperson said that the value in the Disney sponsorship was not just putting your name on something as presented by or the official, but an opportunity to interact with a customer or potential customer for 25 minutes, and that General Motors wanted to move from a functional organization to a brand-driven organization. Whatever that means. This newly reimagined 25 minutes of customer interaction took the form of Test Track, which was the most 2000s thing imaginable. remnants of World of Motion did survive after its closure, although most of them didn't last long. Some of the animatronic figures were kept and shipped to California, where they were reused in Disneyland's Pirates of the Caribbean ride. They remained there until 2006, when an extensive renovation of the ride added new animatronics from the film franchise. The sea serpent from the ocean transport scene has become kind of the de facto mascot of the ride after its closing. The model itself was moved to California Adventure, and it hung out near the bathrooms in the Hollywood backlot area as part of a general collection of props. Unfortunately, the serpent was removed from there sometime in 2010, and his current whereabouts are unknown. The Jungle Navigation Co. Limited Skipper Canteen opened in the Magic Kingdom in 2015. This restaurant is themed to the Jungle Cruise, and it has a big map of ocean critters hanging in one of the rooms. The sea serpent is there, and it's labelled Cabalum Horribilis as a little reference to Ward Kimball. Disneyland Paris' version of It's a Small World also has a World of Motion reference, for some reason. This is not to be confused with the sea serpent from Disneyland's version of It's a Small World, who is nameless and will die in anonymity. No, this sea serpent recreates the Christopher Columbus scene from World of Motion with a small doll in a rowboat, although it's in the Scottish section of the ride. My extensive research has shown that Christopher Columbus was Italian, not Scottish, so perhaps it's supposed to be the Loch Ness Monster? I don't know. My questions remain unanswered. So why don't we talk about World of Motion? One of the foundational principles of Disney's theme park design is storytelling. The architecture, layout, and pacing of Disney rides are all created in service of telling a story to riders. Now, one really easy way to tell a story is through characters. Journey into Imagination had Figment and the Dreamfinder take riders through different aspects of play and creation. These two characters were so beloved, people are still angry about their removal over 2 decades later. Next door to World of Motion, Horizons followed a single family through their increasingly fantastical future living situations, much like the equally well-loved Carousel of Progress. I'm not sure if animatronic dinosaurs count as characters exactly, but they were all Universal Energy had until they added Ellen and Bill Nye in the mid-90s, so I'll leave them alone. World of Motion and Spaceship Earth don't have any central characters, they're both just parades of strangers. Now, to be fair, rides like Pirates of the Caribbean and the Haunted Mansion have a similar setup, but I think they take their riders through a much stronger story with a lot more exciting action happening. You're in a swamp, now you're going back in time, there's a ship battle, there's pirates, everything's on fire, whoa! Spaceship Earth has a stronger narrative hook with the history of human communication and a more inspirational message to end on. World of Motion doesn't really have a story outside of vehicles have kept improving somewhat, and aren't cars neat? Have you thought about buying a new one? Although critics were divided on Epcot's more serious adult tone, there was a general agreement that this was the right approach to be taking, with topics as important as science and technology and training future American fighter pilots through video games.
And I recently learned something quite interesting about video games. Many young people have developed incredible hand, eye, and brain coordination in playing these games. The Air Force believes these kids will be outstanding pilots should they fly our jets.
In all of this serious learning, though, World of Motion stands out as the odd duck. Ward Kimball's skill for sight gags and cartoon humour are the real heart of this attraction, but they're kind of there at the expense of actually learning anything. By the 1990s, Disney had become a punching bag for academics after their failed attempt at a US history-themed park in Virginia. Now, although a lot of the writing these critics did is hilariously edgy and irony-poisoned in hindsight, like, they really don't have a whimsical bone in their body, but I can't help agree with a lot of them when it comes to the value of Epcot attractions as serious attempts at education. Cultural historian William F. Van Vert's experience of Future World's rides was that they were a contentless narrative that hurries through the centuries, names no names, offers no dates, only to rise to a crescendo at the ride's end, revealing both the inadequacies of the past and the large corporation that is already seeing to our needs in the future. The House of Motion begins with the wheel, Archimedes is never mentioned, and guides us to the Great Unmasking, the revelation of General Motors as all-powerful agency, dumping us in a Buick showroom, 8 late-model Buicks revolving without drivers, as though they too were capable of agency. Of course, this presentation of a technocratic utopia developed for the good of a passive consumer is a form of entertainment borrowed from World's Fairs, with Epcot being the ultimate World's Fair kind of thing.
It isn't just a World's Fair.
This World's Fair heritage kind of undermines the educational value these rides were meant to have. They're too slick and abbreviated, and in World of Motion's case, too silly to teach anything. But they also sanitize history through what they choose to omit. The past is presented as a wacky place full of silly ideas that were always going to become outdated. Previous modes of transportation are shown as hopelessly inept until the car came along and made everything better for everyone. Problems that are caused by industry and corporations are left out, and issues of race, class, and gender are neatly sidestepped. The fact that America's dependence on the automobile was one of the causes of the urban crisis that Walt Disney had set out to solve is not going to be mentioned in a ride sponsored by a car manufacturer. The past is a place free from any conflict more complicated than a pratfall into a pigsty. In his examination of Epcot's World Fair lineage, Steve Nelson concluded that the technology and its future applications are explained, but only in a general and vaguely soothing sort of way. None of the undesirable byproducts such as acid rain, the arms race, or runaway nuclear power are touched upon. Issues such as public transportation and pollution are smiled away by grinning robots and a buoyant taped narration. It is assumed that everything either is or will be under control. This message of perfectibility, that humankind can somehow painlessly produce utopia. The care with which Disney renders its illusions makes the subliminal content of Epcot that much more effective. With every inch of the park so carefully planned and controlled, the difference between the real and the contrived is hard to determine. Nobody wants to spend their holiday thinking about acid rain, so World of Motion needs to present the blandest possible skim through history that leaves you with nothing to grasp onto. It just says that vehicles have kept improving somewhat, and aren't cars neat? Have you thought about buying a new one? This framing of the past has corporations playing the role of the savior of the present, and this framing also shapes the depictions of the future. Disney's pro-corporation stance and the sponsor's own creative control over their pavilions ensures that the future is expressed in terms and idioms of the present in order to connect them with the corporation's visions. The future has to be one in which the corporations have a clearly defined presence in order to link them with the present. The problems that they'll be overcoming, the technology they'll be generating, and the visions that will be giving them momentum represent ways of boosting their image for today. The entire EPCOT project was founded on the unshakable belief in American free enterprise and giving great industrial powers the freedom to solve all of our problems. I think that World of Motion feels the most sponsory of all the original Future World pavilions. Universe of Energy also had its sponsor at the forefront, but it has animatronic dinosaurs, so it will be forgiven of all sins. Spaceship Earth, Horizons, and Journey into Imagination all managed to abstract away their corporate sponsors under the broader categories of creativity and communication and human potential. It's like the Country Bear Jamboree being sponsored by Wonder Bread. You don't think about it, you just kind of move on with your life. Although World of Motion tried hard, it couldn't quite get away from just being a celebration of General Motors branded cars. Even the first ever traffic jam is blamed on the horse. The sponsor's product is baked into the entire premise, content, and post-show. You will look at the car, you will appreciate the car, then you will buy the car, and don't you dare imagine a future without a car.
What's so special about the future?
Well, you see, the future contains all the hopes and the dreams of the past and the present. It's really quite wonderful.
In 1982, EPCOT Center captured the imagination with a future we can still only dream of. A future where technology serves to advance all of humanity, instead of making a few sociopaths insanely rich and taking the rest of us down with them. And this is why a ride like Horizons is remembered, and World of Motion isn't. You're never going to be able to lounge in a plush, sunken living room overlooking a futuristic cityscape because you're struggling to make rent on an apartment you share with 2 other people. You're never going to smell those orange groves stretching off into the desert as you effortlessly pilot futuristic irrigation robots because you have to leave to start your shift at the Amazon fulfillment center and hope your boss isn't going to replace you with an AI chatbot. You're never going to live in a cool underwater city with a pet sea lion, and you can't even afford to get killed by a millionaire's homemade submarine. Horizon's legacy lives on in the mind of every theme park fan because it promised a future that was impossibly beautiful, and then that promise was also taken away. Worlds of Motion, though? Well, it's just another Spaceship Earth, isn't it? And we already have one of those. Perhaps it was a case of too much World's Fair, all of the educational rides blurring together into whimsical scenes of people from history. Both World of Motion and Spaceship Earth have a Roman scene, a Renaissance scene, a Victorian scene. Ward Kimball and Mark Davis's talent for visual gags shines through, but it's easy to forget if the cavemen with the hot feet were in the ride that's inside the big ball, or if they were in the other ride that you went on after lunch. What was it called? World of Motion wasn't a mirror that showed our desires for the future of technology in the way Horizons did, and it wasn't as broad or as inspirational as Spaceship Earth. The future of transportation just isn't as exciting when the answer is a slightly smoother car. Without these grander utopian ideas, it never managed to rise above its purpose as an extended advert for General Motors. In all of the technocratic populism of early Epcot, World of Motion stands out as the blandest, weakest link. Even though it's remembered fondly by many who experienced it, and World of Motion fans, I see you, you're valid, I don't think we'll be getting a $30 popcorn bucket of the Sea Serpent anytime soon. There's only room for one lizard in this age of exploiting lost Epcot attractions for profit. World of Motion might have been one of the most ambitious dark rides made by Imagineering, but the world has moved on since then. Thanks for watching.
First place I want to go to is, I always start with the Sphere, and then I go General Motors.